welcome back to another episode of the Backlog Breakdown, a video game podcast where we seek to encourage and equip the church to engage the medium of video games wisely and responsibly. I'm one of your hosts, Nate, and with me today is my co-host, my friend, my brother in Christ, Joshua. Hey, Josh.
I'm Josh. Hello.
You are Josh.
Good evening.
You know, I had this bit that I was thinking about doing.
Yeah.
But I decided not to do it because we're going to be talking about the Stanley Parable tonight, folks. And I was going to do sort of a narrator bit thing, but I didn't. So I when I got to that door, I chose the other one.
You used your faculties of choice. Nate used his faculties of choice to choose the door that included not doing a bit about
not doing the bit.
Yeah.
I thought about it, but it was like...
Meanwhile, Josh tried to do a little bit of a bit.
The narrator bit, and failed miserably.
Horribly.
He retreated into a self-existential pile of shame and dread, never to reemerge.
I'm trying to think of a British insult that I can call myself, but the only ones that come to mind are much worse words in American English. So.
British swears.
Yeah, exactly. Where they're not that offensive when you say them in a British way, but in American, there
are things that the British say that we're like, "Ooh, that's a nasty word," and they're just they call their best friend that. I'm like,
right.
I'm like, oh.
Anyways, we're not going to get too British until a little bit later in the episode because we're talking, like you just mentioned, Stanley Parable is where we're going today.
Yeah.
So this is going to be fun.
It will be fun. Hopefully it will be fun and funny. Probably, because the Stanley Parable is kind of funny. But yeah. We'll see. That was terrible. I shouldn't have said that. That was stupid, and I feel bad for even attempting.
Nate regrets the things that he said while talking into the
immediately.
Yeah,
he wishes he had never opened his mouth.
But all that there is to go forward.
And if you guys are listening to this and saying what are they going on about? Obviously, it's sort of a bit on what the Stanley Parable kind of does, and this is one of those games that when we get to it, guys, if you haven't played it, if you own it and you haven't played it, stop, play the game a few times, spend a few hours with it. A playthrough is not super long. It will give you a greater appreciation for the conversation that we're going to have later. And if you have never played it, consider picking it up because it's not that expensive most of the time. You can find it, that's great radio time. I'm just going to check something real quick and we're going to, because I don't.
It's such an old game. I know the original release. I don't know if they still continue to
so $15 for the base version. The Ultra Deluxe version is $24 or $25 on Steam.
There you go.
And there's a demo for free. I don't know what the demo includes or doesn't include. So, it's a fairly accessible game. So, and it's not super long. So,
right.
So,
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Josh, we're going to talk about that later. But for now, I would to know, it has been, or rather, it's been. Yes, that an undisclosed amount of time since we last spoke. How have you been, my friend?
Yeah,
in the interval since in the interval.
Right. Within the 2 weeks since you talked to me, it has been pretty good, actually. Yes, busy, but that's just life. That's life in America, right? I was actually just talking to someone earlier. Is that yes? I do feel busy a lot of the time, but also I'm one of those people that if I don't feel busy, then I feel lazy, if that makes sense. If I don't do anything, then I feel oh, maybe I should be using my time better and getting other stuff done. So it is self-inflicted is all that I'm saying. But anyways, just a couple things that happened since we last talked is that softball started up again. I'm in a church softball league, and that is a lot of fun. And although my legs are sore, I am not injured after the first game. We won both our games, which is a lot of fun. Crazy wind. I mean, like dust stormed wind. It started raining. It was super cold. It was absolutely insane, but we still had a good time, and not quite as sore as I was last year. Last year it was a very big slap in the face of like, hey, dude, you're in your mid 30s now. You shouldn't pretend
You
like you're
can't
a
be fooling
child.
around with these things, man.
Yes, yeah, and this time around, like, yes, definitely sore and definitely more sore 2 days in rather than the next day, but much more manageable. So I feel pretty good about it. So that's been fun. Um, doing the softball thing, and then this weekend, as of recording. So I guess this will be last weekend after the
Hmm.
release. Is Easter, and so lots that goes into that.
It's a big
We've
weekend.
yeah, we got a Good Friday service going on, and then we've got
Hmm.
our Easter service on Sunday, and so looking forward to a great time. We actually were given some steaks by some friends who they went in with some other friends and they bought the meat of a cow, and so they've had tons of beef, and they gave us some steaks as
Oh,
part of
dude.
that. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna be cooking up some steaks for Easter. Kids will have ham, but mom and dad are having steaks. So,
dude.
anyways, lots to look
Yeah,
forward to. In addition to celebrating resurrection, that's
yeah.
probably the most important thing. But
But
yeah, doing good, dude.
the meat is a pleasant second.
Yes, and it's definitely like while I'm super excited for Sunday, just being in leadership, it's like there's also a little bit of nervousness about or
Hmm.
anxiousness. And so the steak is like the finish line kind of a thing, you know.
Yeah,
Like while I'm very excited to go through Sunday morning, it's also like once you get through it, then there's steak too. So it's just
and then
celebrations all around.
there's steak.
And then there's steak. So hopefully I
Nice,
don't screw it
nice.
up. No, it'll be great. It'll be great. How about you? How you been, dude?
Doing pretty good for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I had mentioned this, but I ended up like
Mm-hmm.
jury rigging our Jeep Liberty so that we,
Oh, nice.
yeah, I, uh, I ripped out the back latch and all the
Okay.
accompanying like guts out of the back door, and
Okay.
then I took a bunch of basically weed eater cord and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like bound everything together.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, so I it's it it my the interior lights are on whenever I'm driving. So
Okay.
we don't drive at night with that one.
Yeah.
But and I have an inspection on that till July, so that definitely gives us some time. And then so yeah, we've got that going for us. We actually last weekend went out to my parents for a few days, and it was good. It was kind of we spent a little bit of time with Byron's bio family because they're sort of out
Okay.
in that general vicinity,
Mm-hmm.
and that was interesting. It was mostly good. Um, you know, but yeah, so we did that, and then we spent a good chunk of Saturday and Sunday with my parents and my brother, and my brother brought his my sister and her husband. They came over Saturday night,
Mm-hmm.
and my brother Luke Deuce brought his kids, and they all came over, and they were all able to, like, Byron's able to interact with all of them. And then Sunday, you know, went to church with my parents. It was kind of weird. I've got to be honest.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure they're going to an AOG, like an Assemblies of God
Okay.
church,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
so it's. whatever. But it's like I think every time that I go to church with my parents, I just there's something in there that just kind of like, but it was a female preaching, and I was just
Okay.
like, and I just at one point I'm like Byron was getting fussy, and I just used that
Hmm.
as an excuse to like vacate. Um, and my dad and I had a conversation after that where I was just like, listen, like if this is where you guys are and you're happy, and the you know, I'm glad for you. I can't be a party to that. Like
Sure.
I don't think that like, but it wasn't like a bad conversation. But yeah. And yeah, just things had a the opportunity on Monday to just like um I stayed home from work and Byron went into daycare, and I just got like a bunch of stuff knocked out.
Mm.
So that had needed to be taken care of. But it's like when you're like on my days off, like I'm busy doing dad mode stuff. So it's
Right.
like there's never
Yep.
time to do anything else.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that was, I mean, it was good. Um, but yeah, so yeah, it's been good. It's just like I
Go,
had
go,
a
go.
day. What's that?
Go, go, go.
Yeah, and it was like it was nice just to have like a day where I could actually get stuff done. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't feel like I've gotten one of those in a long time where it's
Yeah.
like like when I'm home with him, it's just like you kind of just work around his stuff. And it's not that you can't do
Sure.
anything, but it's like you also just have to work around him
Hmm.
and his naps and everything else. So, but yeah, it was nice to just, I got rid of our old car, the Nissan Sentra. We got that towed up to a junkyard and got rid of it. Um, I had to get, I had to get a new social security card issued. So
Hmm.
I took care of that. Yeah. Um, yeah. So
Gotcha.
yeah, we just, it was good. It was good to just like be able to get that stuff done. And
Sure.
actually, this Monday, Megan's going to be home
Nice.
because she's on like a Easter break,
Right.
spring
Yeah.
break kind of thing, and she's got plans for Monday morning. But I'm going to go to the DMV that afternoon and get my license renewed. So it's like
Nice.
it's kind of like, okay, like hey, like I'm actually, there are things that I need to do, and I can
Right.
actually get them done.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's good.
Nice.
Um, yeah,
Cool,
yeah.
man.
So yeah, that's, I mean, it's been good. Nothing, super profound. Just, but like, feels like
Mm.
we're sort of like improving, kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like,
That's good. That's
yeah,
good.
it's
Not sickness and devastation and things
yeah,
like that. Uh,
and
you know.
broken cars and
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was trying to allude to, but that's just how it goes sometimes. But anyways,
yeah,
that's good. While, you said that there's nothing immediately, fantastic on the horizon. I do think that there are some fantastic things that we need to talk about that we've been into over the past couple weeks, including a fantastic AI song.
turn up the sound. We're here to tell you what's going down. You still need a better name. I'll tell you what.
Yes.
I will
Give me
issue
some.
this sort of decree. If somebody gives us a good name for this segment that
Hmm.
we both like,
Yeah.
I think we should reward that with some sort of like financial gain,
Mm.
or like, just like, hey, like 25 virtual bucks to whatever storefront you want if you can name that segment.
Hmm.
Now keep in mind Josh is going to write some just AI slop to
Hmm.
like create the theme song for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's gonna happen. Yeah.
the media report, it's not doing it for me.
Yeah.
So I'm just like,
That's fine.
there's my challenge.
Mm.
It's like, if you, yeah, give us a better name, and if we both like it and we use it, then yeah, yeah,
You may be rewarded. I like that.
you shall be rewarded.
Yeah.
And if you offer us something stupid and insignificant, we you will be mocked.
So that's some motivation for you,
Well, I mean,
possible mockery.
I'm not. Listen, if it's just mediocre, you won't be mocked, but you won't be rewarded.
Mhm.
If it's stupid,
Mm.
like, you know, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna drag you out here and just embarrass you in front of all your friends and family.
Right. So if you
Yeah,
suggest something like, calling the segment the media ochre, then we'll just we'll just dismiss you outright. So,
yeah.
yeah.
That's your pun work was mediocre. Like
Yes, it
that was
was.
what was
Definitely.
mediocre.
Mhm. Yeah.
Disgusting.
Yeah, but you
You're
know what
sick.
what is not mediocre is some of the media that we've been into over the past couple weeks. So I've got a couple things that I'm bringing to the table. Not tons of stuff. I was trying to think. There's not too much like new music or anything that I've been listening to necessarily. But you had mentioned actually last time around the State of the Arc podcast. We both like that. I hadn't listened to it in quite a while. You had particularly recommended an episode about Final Fantasy and Double A and stuff like that, which I did listen to, and that was really good. Some
Yeah,
some interesting thoughts. I was very surprised they didn't mention Bravely Default or Octopath Traveler, but that's a whole other conversation for another time. What I'll say is that I did listen to an episode where they talked about top 10 video game soundtracks. And speaking of Octopath Traveler, they did not mention Octopath Traveler,
mm,
but it made me think of what are some of my favorite video game soundtracks.
mm.
And I also really like Hollow Knight, even though it's very like background kind of ambient.
It's
It's really
atmospheric. It's like
pretty.
mood music. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Hmm.
it's fantastic music to like work or study to.
Kind of have in the
So I
background.
really
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. But Octopath Traveler, so that's kind of my recommendation in terms of music of what I've been listening to, because I did pull it up again because I'm like, is it as good as I remember? And sure enough, dude, if I woke up to the theme of, or excuse me, if I walked out of my door to the theme of Octopath Traveler, like it's gonna be a good day, because that theme just fills me with the sense of adventure. It's just
Dude,
really
and
good.
the break and the boost remixes are
Oh, so good, so good.
so good.
Sick. I've listened to a little bit of the second game's soundtrack, and it's really cool as well. They take some of those themes and kind of like do new mixes basically of them, which is pretty cool. I just don't know it in context. I haven't played the second game yet. It's currently on my backlog. But anyways, Octopath Traveler soundtrack is fantastic. But yes, Break and Boost is a fantastic version of that as well. Outside of that, I have been watching, continuing watching Naruto with my wife. Love that show. We're actually rounding the corner on the first kind of section of it before the time jump, but we've also been skipping fillers, and there's a significant amount of filler in that show, which sucks. Anyways, but outside of
There's
that,
a significant in most shonen. There's a significant amount of filler.
so out of 220 episodes, okay, there is a section that we are coming up on where it's like 80 episodes back to back, all filler, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, like I'm not gonna watch this.
None of it is worthwhile.
Yeah, at least that's what I understand from trolling around in some Reddits and stuff like that. That the filler is generally not good. Um, so, anyways,
That's a bummer.
yeah, not really interested. But then after the time jump, then there's tons more stuff, and I haven't watched any of that. So we might continue going. It's kind of up to my wife, but she really
Mm.
likes it. So, anyways, outside of that, on YouTube, I've actually been watching a lot of fitness content, and I know that sounds really weird, but in the sense of with this active April thing going on,
Hmm.
and getting more serious about it, I wanted to figure out a good kind of workout routine. First of all, I've been doing the 5x5 for a really long time
Hmm.
when it came to strength training, and so I wanted to just change it up. So I found some dumbbell workouts, which I've incorporated, and actually, as of this morning, I started doing it with my son, also waking Ollie up in the morning, and so that's kind of cool. He's excited about it, and it's funny because he's a string bean, so I'd like to get a little bit more muscle on his frame, but also something we can do together, father and son
Yeah.
kind of thing. So that's fun. Um, but then also lots of recipes, like low calorie versions of food,
Hmm.
which is pretty cool because with Active April, looking to shed a few pounds, which has been going pretty well. So I'll just throw out. Feel free to reach out to me, however, if you want more. If you're interested in some of this stuff, but some of the people that I've been watching on YouTube that have some really cool recipes are, uh, I don't even know how to. Rahul is his name. That's his name. Rahul Kamat. Exercise for cheat meals is really good. Remington James has some good stuff. He's a little his personality is a little weird, but whatever. And then there's another YouTuber called The Cog is Shred, because there was a band that he was in called The Cog is Dead. And he's got some good recipes. So been watching that stuff. So
Hmm.
that's something to report on. The last thing that I'll report on is a book that I just started listening to earlier today. It is called It's called The Things of Earth. It's by Joe Rigney. So he was a professor
Hmm.
at Bethlehem Baptist College when he wrote this. It was back in like 2015, so quite a while ago. So the thesis of this book is basically, you think of Bethlehem Baptist College, um, John Piper, you know, and his whole bent of Christian hedonism. Well, this book is about how we are what's called the things of earth. I'm trying to think of how to say this, but how God knows that we are finite creatures, and He understands, and He created all things, and He saw it fit to make us finite and to put us in this world of things. And he created us to take joy in the things of this world as well, as a way to enjoy him. And so
Hmm.
what this book kind of delves into it's sort of like a case against dualism of material things bad, spiritual things good,
Hmm.
kind of idea, but talks about the goodness of the things that we do here on earth and the things that we enjoy here on earth and how they point us back to God. And so divorced from God, yes, it can be it can be idolatry, certainly, but that the joy that we take in the things that we do, the things that we spend our time on, or like a good meal, the joy that we take in that is not by accident, but is actually a gift from God. And it shows us a little bit about who God is. And so we do it in worship to Him by enjoying the good gifts that He's given us. This is a really cool thesis. I'm probably not even halfway through the book, but I've been enjoying it quite a
The
bit.
things of Earth.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So good stuff. That's what I've been into. Um, yeah, I figured that one in particular kind of has some implications for what we do on this podcast as well.
Yeah.
So wanted to
Yeah.
check it out.
I'm actually buying it right now.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I think it'd be a good one to kick around. So
Yeah.
awesome. That's what I've got to report on. How about you?
Um. Okay. So I'm going to start out with my book,
Mm-hmm.
and it is similar to. I'm waiting for all the things to go through,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just taking forever. Um. It's called Full Time.
Okay.
The uh it was the Full Time by David Bonson. The it's and yes, that's Greg Bonson's
Okay.
son.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But Full Time Work in the Meaning of Life is like the subtitle. And it is he was on The Way I Heard It with Mike Rowe, And
Okay, sweet.
I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I listened to it there and I was like, okay, this is kind of compelling, kind of interesting. And it's a book that I'm not sure that I would recommend it to everybody. And in fact, I think in some people's hands, this book could kind of be a little dangerous because they would, I think, not heed some of the warnings. The
Okay.
one thing that like the one sort of like major criticism is that I think um Bonson kind of overstates his position in the sense that
Okay.
he doesn't he kind of just sort of he's advocating for stronger work ethic. He actually lays out a pretty solid theology of work and our relationship to it for the most part. Like I would probably differ with him on a few things, but it's a book basically laying out the case that like you and I, like we were made to work.
Mhm.
Um, Now I think he does kind of like, it's like, what I would say is like, this book is probably like, I'm like 80-20 with it. Right. And so
Okay.
there's like 80% of it. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. This is very good. And then there's this part like sort of right at the end of a lot of his arguments where he just like turns up the volume on his argument where I'm like,
Hmm.
no, like we don't go there. Like
Okay. Okay.
it's hard for me to just like, he doesn't. So like an area where, he kind of attacks work-life balance, right? He's like, you
Okay.
don't see anything like that in the Bible, you know, um, you don't see anything like that. It's like you were made to work. And he kind of like in advocating for rest, he's like, you have one day in seven. He's like, and he doesn't like lay out really hard lines,
Mhm.
but he doesn't spend any time fleshing some of that other stuff out and sort of like, and he kind of like dismisses a lot of things. And he has to redefine terms to suit himself. So like
Okay.
he doesn't like the word workaholic or workaholism because he doesn't
Mhm.
actually think that's a problem. His kind of his position is that a lot of people are really lazy and they just need to work harder. And he's not entirely wrong, but I
Mhm.
also don't think that's the totality of like, I think there are things that he doesn't address or doesn't pay attention to or kind of like walks right past that you can have meaningful conversation of, but they're also like pushback against some of his positions. Like you can have a meaningful conversation that would ultimately, I think, strengthen it, but like he just doesn't want to kind of acknowledge or deal with those things. Um, so like one of the things is like he does caution against idolatry, so making an idol out of accomplishment and you know neglecting your family, but he doesn't. He just kind of like, it's like, I don't think that it's almost like his position in the book kind of seems like, I don't think it's as big a problem as people want to make it. And I'm like, okay, like there is a difference between, and it's like it's one of those things where if I could sit down with him, and I'm like elder millennial, like I'm sort of like I
Mhm.
sit right between
Mhm.
Gen X and millennial. Period. He's very Gen X,
Okay.
a very smart dude. Like it's a really really fascinating book.
Mhm.
It's just it's like I said, it's like there's a point where it's like 80% of it I'm like yes yes yes, and the 20% that I'm like no is like where he just kind of like lands in a few places that I'm like it's hard to talk about it without, it's just like it's a book that I think people should read. It's just be very careful.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fair.
because I think most of it is pretty helpful, but I think where he lands in a few spots is could be really dangerous. And I'm like, even the idea that you're made to work, that's a part of why your existence. Like you're ultimately made for relationship. You're made for a relationship with God first and foremost, but also other people. And vocation and your labor can be a part of that. But if that gets in the way of those things, then it's wicked.
Mhm.
Like in the sense that like if you are putting that over relationship, I would say that that's evil. And you should
Mm.
repent. That's sinful and you should repent. And I'm not necessarily sure that he would co-sign with that. Like,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like one of those things. I think the book is like really good. I just think he kind of takes his arguments a little too far.
Yeah.
It's, but I mean, yeah. So it's one. It's like there's a bit of an asterisk. I think it's a worthwhile read for most people. I think there are going to be some people who would read this book and look at it as a justification to keep indulging in sinful, like ambitious work patterns where like they are neglecting relationship, they are neglecting responsibilities to, because it's like, and I I also think that there are some people who probably aren't working nearly hard enough
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that this book is a really would be really useful. So it's
Yeah.
like it's kind of like it can be really dangerous for a fringe,
Mhm.
you know, kind of demographic. I think it's broadly pretty helpful.
Yeah.
I like the
Cool.
book. I do. Like I like it enough that after I listened to the audiobook, I bought a physical copy. So it's
Oh,
like
nice. Yeah.
I just think it's a book that you have to wrestle with.
Yeah.
Um and you have to just sort of, you know, he I think he does lay out some pretty compelling arguments. But yeah, it's a good book. I recommend it with kind of an asterisk on it.
Mhm.
Like, you know, so yeah, I yeah, it's one that I'd love to frankly, I'd love to hear what you think about it sometime.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll have to check it out.
it's like I said, it's like one of those things like 80 I was like for a while I was like, yeah, like I'm like 90% on this book. Like I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
this is pretty good. And then as I've sat back from it a little bit, I'm like, yeah, I'd probably scale that back. Like I think there were some things in there that were very convicting for me that but I think also yeah, there are just some like I said, there I think some things that he turns the volume up on a few things where I'm like, that's not helpful. That's actually not good.
Mm.
It goes beyond just not being helpful. It was like that. That's probably you're probably actually like maybe being a little damaging. But
Mhm. Mhm.
again, a really smart dude. It's a really interesting book. I think the vast majority of it is really good. So,
Yeah.
um,
Cool.
just as like not watching a ton, I did start rewatching Jujutsu Kaisen. It's like sort
Okay.
of on my lunch
Mhm.
break, so I watch it for like 10 minutes. And because I that one I think we're getting close to the end of that one, and so it's like
Okay.
I did like that, but I'm not watching that super seriously. And this
Sure.
this next so this the thing that I've actually been watching and really enjoying with Megan actually
Mhm.
kind of have to throw up a bit of a flag. It's called
Okay.
Last One Laughing, the UK version. It's on
Okay.
Amazon Prime Video.
Yeah.
Um, and we were talking about like British humor and
Mhm.
language, and there were parts of that I was howling, like I was
Okay.
laughing, like belly laughing,
Yeah.
watching some of that show. Richard Iowade is how you say his name,
Oh,
is
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
treasure.
Uh-huh.
He
Is he
is
on that?
he's on it and he's
Oh,
a gem. He's
wow.
an absolute killer on it, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Dude, I'd
but
imagine he'd be really hard to get out just because he seems to be able to
yeah,
hold his
well,
composure. Although I was surprised, with other seasons about who got knocked out pretty early. So, anyways, sorry.
but last one laughing. Jimmy Carr's the host. I love Jimmy Carr. He's the one that's
Okay.
got like the inverted laugh thing, and it's
Uh
just
huh. Yeah.
the ha 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 ha, because he laughs on the inhalation, and it's just so ridiculous and disarming. Um, it's really funny. There's, it's definitely not like Yeah, sort of parents
Yeah, it
screwing
is
that.
not clean humor. Yeah.
No, it's a bunch of comedians just, and they're like, the whole premise is they're just going in there to like, they can't smile, they can't laugh, they can't
Mhm.
like, so it's just like comedians go like just going after each other, trying to get each other to laugh. And
Yeah.
yeah, um, it's delightful though. It
Yeah.
is, it is so much fun.
It
Um,
it is interesting because the things that comedians laugh at is almost more of like the more clever things, if that makes sense. Like how you come to make a joke out of something seems to be the thing that makes more comedians laugh than the things that are most outwardly funny, is what
well,
it felt
it's,
like to me. But I
they
could be
kind
wrong.
of have like a mechanical, like they have a deep mechanical understanding of
Mhm.
humor and
Yeah.
like how like the punchlines and the timing and everything else.
Yeah.
So they have a greater appreciation for that. But it's also like they're in a room together. I think it's like 8 hours. So over the
Right.
course of a
Yeah.
day. And so when you start getting to the end of that, they start almost getting like punch drunk.
Right.
And it's like there's at one point in time, like the one contestant got themselves out because they started laughing at their own material,
Right.
like
Yep.
because
Yep.
they were just like so on the edge, like,
Right.
and it was, but it was like it was so much fun to watch.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just the stupidity and the
Right.
hijinks, and yeah, again, some of it is, it's definitely not what I would call family friendly. So it's there's some language and
Yeah.
there's, but it was ridiculous. It makes me
Mhm.
like, but, and what's even funnier is like, cause I started watching the Canadian version
Right.
of that show, and it, man, Canadians have real potty mouths. That's all I'm saying. Like, you know, it's, but yeah, it's really funny. It's
Mhm.
really, really funny. Um, it's only a few, it might be like 6 episodes.
Okay.
Um, so it's not a super big burn.
Mhm.
I was delighted by it. I just, we finished it tonight, actually, shortly before we started recording. And I
Nice.
was just like, like I said, at one point in time, I was belly laughing earlier because I was just like, this is so ridiculous and
Hmm.
stupid. Um, and it's just like, I think it's also really funny to watch comedians struggle to not break.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
half the fun is just watching them like trying not to just lose their minds.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so there's that. The last thing I want to bring up is, and it's just but it's an artist, and you and I talked about a little bit before in the
Mhm.
pre-show. It's a guy named Mac Glocky. He just kind
Okay.
of does like covers of songs and reinterpretations, but they're really great.
Mm.
So like, he did a version of Espresso, but he did it in the style of 311, and the way he
Mhm.
mixed, the way he does his vocals, everything, it just like, it sounded like an actual, like it could have, it sounded like it belonged on a 311 record.
Mhm.
He does stuff in the style of System of a Down, the Deftones, like there's a few Nirvana ones. He's done some Smashing Pumpkin covers. Like,
Okay.
he does Corn sometimes. I'm not
Okay.
so big on, like, I don't really like Corn.
Yeah.
And so when he does a version of a song in the style of Corn,
Yeah.
it just really, although I'm pretty sure his
It's pretty
version of,
hard to digest. Anyways.
I'll, just, you're awful. I don't want to see that later. Um,
All right.
but
Yeah, not a fan of corn.
no, but like his version of Bop, I think, is done in the style of Corn,
Oh,
and
wow.
that is a really wild juxtaposition,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's kind of insane. It's not my favorite thing, but it is kind of like a bit of a
You're
insane
you're
little
glad that
fever
it
dream.
exists.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, this is, like, something that, like, I'm not gonna listen to this, like, over and over again, but I'm
Mhm.
like, "Oh, this is unhinged," and I
Yeah.
I kinda love it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just it's MAC and then Glocky, CKY.
Mhm.
Um, and again, it's something like I have pretty much everything I've brought here, I've had caveats and, like, warnings and asterisks saying like,
Sure.
"Oh, be careful." Again, he covers a lot of, like, he's not a Christian, he's not a believer as far as
Mhm.
I can tell. So like he covers songs and he's sometimes there's swears. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
but yeah, some of his stuff is like that that espresso in the style of 311. I was just so tickled by that because I was like,
Mm.
I was like, holy crap. A very talented young man. So
Mhm.
it was really pretty pretty delightful to sort of like check that out.
Nice.
But yeah, so that's as far as like non-video game related stuff. That's kind of
Mm.
like
Mhm.
that's been like the cream of the crop. Like that's the big hits on my radar. But we are a video game podcast, Josh, and I feel like we
That's
should talk
right.
about what we've been playing lately. So, what
Yeah.
have you been playing, my guy?
Okay, so I finished up actually the Banner Saga, or at least the first chapter of the Banner Saga. I don't even know
Hmm.
what the designations are for the other ones. I have the
They're just Banner
collection.
Saga Part 1, 2, and
Okay,
3.
okay,
I think it's just Banner Saga 2, Banner Saga 3.
there you go. Well, I finished the first one. And again, last episode we said that we didn't want to talk too much about the game because we're going to be doing an entire episode on it.
Hmm.
But I will say that it I enjoyed my time quite a bit with the game. It is not a perfect game, but the areas in which it was not done well, or excuse me, it was not perfect. Um, I think we're easily kind of smoothed over just by the overall tone of the game. The I talked about art style, even the music that goes into it, but even some of the themes of the game that continue to be pulled out, and the way that it pulls on your heartstrings, and I feel like leadership is a huge theme of the game. And it
Hmm.
made me realize how poor of a leader I am because my decisions were not that great. And I don't know.
Well, you know what, I want to save
Mhm,
the majority of this. I think sometimes it's like even the best leaders, sometimes you make it like the best possible decision or what you
mhm,
think is a good decision, and the unforeseen consequences
yeah.
and the fall, like, and it's like, so it's, yeah, it's a really interesting game for some of that stuff.
Yeah, I will say I went in blind. Like I knew what the Banner Saga was,
Hmm.
but in terms of like story beats or anything like that, I went in blind. I will also say this is not spoiler, but it has to do with the functions of the game. There is no manual save in the game; it saves for you. So the game is
Hmm.
very much made so that you do not save scum, but that you make decisions and continue on. And so I let myself be carried away with the current so that when you make a poor decision, it's just like, oh, that sucks. So it may very well be that if you made a different decision, it could have ended the same way. It might just all be an illusion, but I will say that illusion like had me, and definitely made me wrestle with some of the things that I was deciding throughout the game. So I think it worked really well. Anyways, that is probably too much detail. I'll just say that I really enjoyed the game. So um,
Cool.
I don't know that I'm actually going to continue on to the second and third ones, although they are very much connected. It's just a continuation. There
Hmm.
is an ending, but it's a continuation, sort of like Lord of the Rings or something like that. Um,
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed it, but just due to the nature of the games that I've picked to play this year, I doubt that I'm going to play the second one until next year. So
Hmm. But
really
you do
enjoyed.
intend to play the second one.
I mean, yeah, I want to see how it continues, and I think it's probably based on the first one worth my time for sure. Yeah, yeah, I want to see where it goes. because there's big impending doom that's going on. So, anyways,
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed the Banner
Stake,
Saga
the
quite
stakes
a
are
bit.
big.
Yes, yeah. Even though, again, satisfying ending. Um, there's more. There's more for sure. Other game that I have been playing. I've only had 2 sessions with this game. Okay, Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty, the HD version. I will just say, being completely honest, being completely transparent, this game was very frustrating for my first session. This game does not teach you how to play this game. After my first session with the game, I went online and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Okay, one, it's just an older game. Okay, so it's gonna play very differently. You don't have twin stick controls. You don't have control of the camera. So there are some frustrating things there. In addition to that, I saw in multiple places people asking, okay, but how do I like actually play this? How do I learn to play this game? And the suggestion was play the first game. And that is horrible that you are required to play the first game to learn how to play the second game. I've played the first game, but it's been a long time since I played the first game. But there is literally like maneuvers and things that are fairly basic to what you're doing in the game that is not taught to you in the beginning of the game. So I will just say the opening of Metal Gear Solid 2 is very frustrating. At least it was for me. Now, you can say, well, yeah, it's, 15 years later or however long ago the game
Mm-hmm.
came out. Probably longer, probably way longer than that. But it's been a long time. Games have progressed. Yes, that is true. However, I think there should be some sort of tutorial that's not VR missions. It should at least kind of like push you towards like, hey, here's how to learn how to play the game. Like, you don't have to treat me like I'm stupid, but I would like to know what at least my face buttons do. So all
That
that out
game
of the
is
way.
almost 25 years old at
Okay,
this point.
25. There you go.
It was released in 2001.
Okay. Yep. Yep. So, you can, you can give it a pass, but for someone coming at it much, much later down the line, it was just very frustrating. Now, I had another session with it today after reading some stuff online, after looking around, after watching some videos. It's like, okay, I get it more. I still have some frustrations with it, but I'm beginning to understand it more. It just has a pretty high not difficulty curve, but the just getting comfortable with the game. There's a phrase for that for some reason is not popping up, but but getting used to it just takes a while. So I'm going to continue on. I'm just saying that it does not leave a good first impression, even though I like the whole cinematic quality of the game. Like I think there are some things that I enjoy about it, but the gameplay is not one of them, unfortunately. So I'll continue on and I'll report later as well as we continue to report on our backlogs. But that's what I've been playing for the most part. Since I beat the Banner Saga, I get a -1 to my backlog beatdown score. However, I picked up another game. I was walking through Walmart and in the clearance rack there was Live Alive on Switch for $25, and so I purchased that game for a +1. So I'm still at -5 for the year, because I'm excited to play Live Alive next year. So there
There
we
you
go.
go.
That's what I have to
There you
report
go.
on. What have you been playing, Nate?
Um, not okay. So I did get sort of sidetracked, and I'll talk about that here in a minute.
More Snap.
No, well, actually, I did kind of Snap died off for a little bit.
Nice.
Um, but I kind of dipped into Astrobot a little bit.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I beat a few stages. There's some challenge levels that I kind of get caught up on, like hung up on a little bit. Like they're
Okay.
necessary for completion, but they're not necessary for progression.
Sure.
Um, so playing a little bit of Astrobot, it's delightful. It's
Hmm.
charming. So yeah, I like that one. Um, yeah, not tons of time there, but I actually fired up 999. Um,
Okay.
got through the first puzzle,
Okay.
and I am using a walkthrough to kind of like guide
Okay.
me through that, just to sort of like help me get my feet.
Okay.
I'm coming to terms with the fact, and it might be something that kind of comes up tonight, but it's like I just well, puzzles and me, like, we're not super
Okay.
friendly.
Okay.
Like, and it's not that it's like I think even when we were playing like the Talos Principle, like this is just
Sure.
something that I'm coming to like I like puzzles,
Mhm.
but I also don't like them.
Mhm.
You know, and
Mhm.
um so it's kind of one of those things where 999 has been interesting because it is so puzzle heavy, and
Right.
sometimes I'm like these puzzles don't really make that much sense sometimes, you
Okay.
know, and it's like, oh, is it that it doesn't make that much sense, or is that I'm just not willing to put in the time?
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
so there's kind of a, but it's like I'm just wondering too. I'm like, part of this whole experience is like I don't know that I like puzzle games all that much. Like I don't
Sure.
know like
Well,
um
and it's interesting because I do, I like the Talos Principle. I like games like Professor Layton a lot. I obviously like 999. However, I think I had similar thoughts to what you're describing when I played through Ace Attorney 2 last year. Of like, I like this game. I'm not sure that the puzzle elements of it are really up my alley because I feel like I'm not getting it. Like it just doesn't. I need someone to tell me what to do because it's not clicking the same way that other puzzle games do.
I think,
So,
and I think Ace Attorney, okay, so and maybe this is just like the visual novels, there's a bit of a spectrum, but I think Ace Attorney though is really close to like a sort of point and click adventure game.
right.
Um which there's like design. I just and because I want to talk about this more in depth, but it's like
Mhm.
there's this kind of thing where it's just like I just wonder if like because I used to like those games a lot more.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if sort of in a way, and I hate saying it this way, but like maybe
Mhm.
I've sort of outgrown some of that,
Yeah.
to where it's just like I just don't have the patience for it.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, but I've been playing it. It's cool. It's a cool setup. It's a cool premise. I'm interested. I'm going to see it through
Yeah.
because that's one of our games on the list. But the one that kind of like got a hold of me and just totally sidetracked me was something that I fired up kind of on a whim. Actually, I had my pastor over and he brought his two boys over. And the
Okay.
oldest, Eli, he's in kindergarten and he likes video games. He keeps telling me that he wants to play Shadow of the Colossus. And I'm like, dude, you're not ready for
Mm.
Shadow of the Colossus. Like, believe me, there will come a time like when you're old enough, when you're ready,
Mhm.
like, we'll do this, my guy.
Yeah.
Like I have no problem sort of like ushering you into like sort of like, you know, transcendent games. Um, I have no problems with that. But um, actually uh, bought him the Mega Man X Legacy Collection for his Switch.
Aw.
And I
Nice.
was like, dude, I said, I'm going to give you a little bit of homework, Eli. You need to learn how to play Mega Man X.
Nice.
And
Nice.
um, so that was, but anyways, I fired up like we were just kind of like floating around and I was like, "Hey, this one's kind of cool." I fired up Dragon Quest Builders.
Okay.
And I had fired this game up and played a little bit of it and kind of bounced off of it cuz it's Dragon Quest meets Minecraft. And I was like,
Right.
"That's stupid. I don't like that." Like I don't really like Minecraft. It's like I get the thing, but I also just think it's kind of a dumb premise.
Mhm.
I just
Mhm.
like Minecraft does nothing for me.
Yeah.
But then I started playing this game, like just
Okay.
playing it, actually playing it. And next thing I know, like it's the only thing I'm playing. Like I'm like
Oh.
low key obsessed with the game. Um, and I think what kind of helps is that there's a little bit of story sort of like framing everything,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
there's also some like really interesting systems and like the buildings serve a purpose. It's not just like, oh,
Okay.
build whatever you want. It's like you're building up these little towns and you have a
Mhm.
really like kind of like small area. Um, and this might be like, I'm still pretty early on. I haven't beaten the first chapter yet, but
Okay.
I think I might try to push to get this on the list. Um,
Okay.
that's how much I like it. That's how much I'm enjoying my time with it. And
Sure.
it's not, it's just, it is a comfort food game,
Yeah.
but it is a very rich and charming. Like it oozes charm. Like
Mhm.
the charm in this game is actually like disarming. Like it just kind of like, you know, it's like one of those video games. It's like you go and you play and you're like, oh, this is like why this is an encapsulation of like why I love this medium in
Mhm.
so many ways. Like it doesn't have a lot to say. But it's just fun and it's sweet and it's clever and it's beautiful and it's like, oh man. So I went down the rabbit hole with it, and I'm kind of like it kind of pulled me away from everything else. And so it's like I think
Yeah.
I'm just gonna like follow that for a little bit. I think it's not a super long game. How long to be? I think has it like 20-25 hours.
Right.
Um, so I'm gonna play Dragon Quest Builders because it's delightful. And the part that is a little like hard, and I just have to like rein myself in, is that when I'm building, like I want to make everything perfect, and like just
Oh,
like there's a
wow.
weird like obsession, and it's like
Mhm.
I'm gonna do this, and I'm blah blah. And it's like, dude, like you, like you don't need to be insane over this.
Mhm.
So it's, but I think it's beautiful. I think it's great. I love it.
Nice.
Also today, and it's I was listening to Into the Aether, and they
Mhm.
referenced a game called Good Sudoku, and I was like, I think I played that before, and I might have, but I it's free,
Oh, okay.
on iPhone, so I picked it up, and I've just been playing the free version, and it's like sort of an optimized version of Sudoku that teaches you how to play Sudoku better.
Okay.
Um, and it's cool. I like Sudoku,
Yeah.
like, which is weird because it's like that's kind of a puzzle game. It's a
Yeah.
logic game. Um, but so just I was playing that a little bit today. It's kind of fun. I don't know
Nice.
how much I'm going to stick with it or anything, but and in preparation for this episode, I did play through and beat the Stanley Parable. Um, so that gets me a -1.
Yeah,
I
you
haven't
did.
picked up anything in a minute, but yeah, I was at -4. I'm now at -5. So yeah,
Sweet. Hey, there you go, man. That's awesome.
sort of ticking along here. But yeah, but if you guys, talking about beatdown scores and all that other stuff, like if you guys have been listening or watching for any amount of time, you know exactly what we're talking about. And if you don't, the beatdown is a meta that basically encourages you to play the games that you already own and to
Mhm.
minimize buying new games. Um, it's you want a negative score, you want a low score. So yeah, if you're interested in that, sort of like exploring that a little bit more, we have the rules posted in our Discord. You can reach out to us, email us, or whatever, and we'll get you a copy or whatever of the current rule sheet. But yeah, so yeah, it's something that if you're interested in, it's there, and
Yeah.
we'd love to have you sort of join. We think it's a fun little system that's worthwhile. Other things that we think are worth your time and worth checking out, it's we actually have a Patreon, and it is a tip jar, right? But it's not just a tip jar. It's also a way for you to partner with us if you have done the sharing and the caring, if you've done the rating and the reviewing, and you're looking for a way to go a little bit above and beyond, you can contribute to that for as little as $1 a month. You get early and uncut access to each and every episode. You get a special role in our Discord. You have the opportunity as a patron to pick a game or a topic for us to do an episode on, and you get actually an exclusive podcast called the Bro Hang, where it tends to be a little more stream of consciousness,
Mhm.
not necessarily video game related. Sometimes it gets a little spicy. Sometimes it gets kind of silly. It's a spectrum.
Mhm.
And it just tends to be a little more conversational. And yeah, the antics are a lot less reined in. Like we kind of follow our whims.
Yeah.
And so it gets a little crazy, but it's fun. Patrons seem to enjoy it. And yeah, if that's something you'd be interested in, feel free to check us out on patreon.com.
Mhm.
I think it's / the backlog breakdown, but
You got it.
links are in the link tree. So yeah. lastly, but not leastly, we are we have some friends that we've come alongside, and we really think that you ought to check out some of their stuff as well. Not only should you check out the GG app, which is the official app of the Backlog Breakdown, but you should also check out our friends over at the Playwell Network. You've got Paul Lytle, the techno funk boy, who has the Thorns of War, which is a Dragonlance actual play podcast. You've got Porcho, the Wonder from Down Under, with Nothing New Under the Porch, which it tends to kind of basically sort of work out to be like Hard Drive is the video game satire website. So it's like Hard Drive that isn't sort of that loves Jesus. And
Mhm.
it's a little satirical. It's a little weird. It's kind of absurdist. Lots of like bad impressions, and accents. But we love Porcho. Love what he's doing there. We also have Wesley Ray, the Henshin Dad. His current project is Retronym, which is sort of an introspective, retrospective, like
Mm.
nostalgia video game kind of podcast thing. Yeah, and it tends to be pretty short form, except for his Pokemon tier lists. They go on for hours, and he says some very unpleasant things that I love Wesley. He's a sweet man, and I count him as a pretty good friend. But it leaves me a little concerned. I'm just saying. That being said, guys, we love those guys. We love what they're doing. So here's a word from one of them.
This is Phil from Phil's Gaming Emporium. We have all your retro needs and are a proud sponsor of the Play Well Network. In honor of you getting pwned, we are offering a cheap backlog reduction sale. Just request our services with the promo code BACKLOG half off for 50% off our backlog services. After that, we simply send you a package for you to put your backlog in, and once the mail carrier comes, your backlog is gone. It's like magic. You have a clean slate and room for more games that you can order from our website, Phil's Gaming Emporium.
And we're back. So, folks, tonight we're going to be talking about the Stanley Parable. And
That's right.
just as a bit, I don't know how spoilery this conversation is going to be. There's probably going to be some spoilers, but it's kind of a game. I don't know. I mean, you can talk about it, but I think this is a game that is, and I use the term game pretty loosely because I think tends to be like a little bit more of an experience. Like there
Mhm.
are some gamified elements, but this actually feels to me more of like a walking sim, a la like
Yes.
Firewatch kind of
Mhm.
thing, where
Mhm.
there's very
David
limited
Finch.
interactivity. Um, but yeah, it's so it's just sort of listeners, viewers, sort of, kind of wander in at your own peril here because, yeah, I mean, some of just even what we're going to talk about, though, may color like your experience with the game just because
Mhm.
it's just tough to talk about a game like this for a lot of reasons, but
Yeah.
it's
I would almost take, or it sounded like you were saying you don't know if we're going to talk about spoilers. I would almost take the opposite approach in that we can't talk much about this game at all except
without.
for spoiling things. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think what we can definitely talk about some scenarios, but I think we can
Sure.
have like a broader conversation just about like, well, just kind of, we can sort of tap into those the who's and the what's and the
Yep.
where and the why and all of that. And we can sort of flesh that out, a little bit.
For sure.
Um
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I think
yeah, go ahead.
though, just kind of giving an explanation of what this game is. Like you said, it is very much akin to a walking simulator. The first version of this game, which I believe was free, was a Half-Life 2 mod.
It
Um,
was in the source engine.
yeah. So it started its life in that way. The opening of the game, I'd like to just give an overview for anyone who hasn't played it. The opening of the game, you have this British narrator talking about this man at his desk, and then it shows you this man is in his cubicle. He's at his desk. He's at work. He's got a nice life, whatever. He's got a good job, but he sits at a cubicle all day, and on his computer it just tells him to push certain buttons at certain times, and he's really good at that. Well, this game starts off, and Stanley, which is the person at the desk, he's waiting, and he doesn't get any more instructions. So he doesn't know what's going on. Why is it taking so long? And like, this is my work, but there's nothing to do. So he gets up and he notices that there's no one else around, not just in his cubicle, but in his room, in his area, in pretty much the whole building that he's in. There's no one else around. And so you have this guy, this British man, narrating Stanley's thoughts, where he's going, and what he's doing. And you have this little bit of a mystery. So that is the very beginning of the game. That's kind of that's where it sets you off with the game. You're in control of Stanley, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but you have this narrator who kind of moves a little bit from explaining who Stanley is to then what he does, but he does so by speaking about Stanley in the past tense of events that have not happened. It's so, for instance, it'll say Stanley walked to the restroom, but you're in control of Stanley. So do you really want to walk into the restroom, or would you rather go and turn and go into the broom closet instead?
Mm.
And the narrator then would respond depending on what you do, whether or not you follow what he says that Stanley is doing, or whether you choose to have Stanley do something else. And so there's a little bit of cat and mouse between you, who are controlling Stanley as you're trying to figure out what's going on, versus the narrator, who is trying to control you, controlling Stanley by telling you what Stanley is doing. And all kinds of shenanigans ensue
Mm-hmm.
from this relationship, from these series of relationships that are going on. But that is the conceit of the game, of the experience, like you're talking about, the Stanley Parable. But it is, like you said, walking sim. I mean, you're pretty much just controlling Stanley, and then outside of that, it's like a one-button game.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
interact with things. But that's about it.
Yeah, and it is, I think it's sort of interesting, because it is a game that kind of, especially the more you play it, like, it has multiple endings, but there
Mm-hmm.
are things that kind of unfold, and we're only talking about the base version, because there's also the ultra deluxe version,
Mm-hmm.
which sort of adds some content. It actually moves it from Source Engine to Unity.
Mm-hmm.
So I did want to just the developer and the publisher is Galactic Cafe. That's the studio name or whatever.
Okay.
But I think what's kind of interesting is that it's a game that too, and again, I don't know that we really need to get too much into the scenarios, because I think
Sure.
part of what it does, and again, we can talk about them if we really want to or need to, but it's a game that sort of asks the question, what if? Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
it asks questions about like it sort of makes certain presuppositions about will and agency, and just
Mm-hmm.
exercising these things, and what does that mean, and are you like like, are you in control, or are you just sort of and it's an interesting reflection, and it's kind of one of the things that I think is kind of cool about it, right, is that it is funny, right? Like, it goes
Yeah.
without like, this game is primarily, I would say, a comedy game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
really kind of the only reason I think that, if this game were a little more earnest about sort of like some of the scenarios and exploring some of those themes and ideas, and if it took itself a
Mm-hmm.
little more seriously, like, it wouldn't, it would be not, it wouldn't carry as much weight. It'd be a lot more trite and kind of just like,
Mm-hmm.
but the humor does sort of help to carry that. Now, that being said, I do think that the Stanley Parable is very much a game of its time, and that
Okay.
the only thing that kind of keeps it relevant is the fact that it is funny, that it is humorous, that
Okay.
it does kind of like take the wind out of its own sails a little bit, And I
Yeah.
think that sort of self-awareness in the game design actually lends itself to being a little more timeless. But I also feel like it does even in spite of that, it does feel like a little trite at times, a little maybe pretentious, where it's like, and
Hmm.
again, it's tempered
Yeah.
by its humor, but I do very much feel like there were a lot of games out of that era that sort of were doing the same things. I think this does it better than most. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? But it
Hmm.
was kind of like these artsy fartsy games, kind of exploring ideas and sort of wrestling with this stuff in different ways. And I think this is in a lot of ways best in class. It's
Hmm.
like the metaphor and the analogy is very subtle. The way it sort of like wrestles with these things is pretty interesting.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I think the only thing that keeps it from just being an absolutely just pretentious piece of slop is is the fact that it's funny and the writing is very clever
Hmm.
and that it doesn't take itself so seriously, you know.
Right. Yes. Yes. That I think that's a key part of it. I want to put a pin in that and come back to it after we can talk more spoilers. But yes, I completely agree with you. Yeah. Once again, it is very comedic in its tone, and so I think you'll have fun with the game if you haven't played it. Um, I would encourage you to play it. It's a short playthrough.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
lots of different endings, and so and you don't. It's not like you have to see them all. They're playing around with these concepts. So if these concepts sound interesting to you, of having this narrator who, um, again, he's a British guy, and so just the way that he talks and the way that he expresses things, he is very expressive. But you can feel sometimes how he talks down to you, or his snarkiness in his tone and things like that.
It's a little
Which
dry. It can be pretty passive aggressive. Um,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah.
and so it's funny. Yes, it does veer into the black comedy sometimes, of
Hmm.
like, oh, dealing with some darker subjects, but in a very comedic way. But I do think there's that through line of comedy. I would say that, but again, I can flesh that out a little bit more once we're kind of past the point of spoilers. But if you haven't played the game and these things sound interesting to you, I would definitely recommend playing the game. Nate, it sounds like you would as well. You said it was
Yeah.
best in
Yeah.
class.
Yeah. I mean, as a point of comparison, like I think I think that frankly, like it's comparable in some ways to Portal, but Portal's way more fun, and GLaDOS is a much more
Okay.
fleshed out sort of antagonist than
Okay.
the narrator is not really an antagonist. He's more of a foil. Um,
Hmm.
but I think Portal's humor is a little tighter, and I
Okay.
think the gameplay is like, and I think what also just is the gameplay is a little more fun. Like Portal
Okay.
is much more of a game, where, and
Hmm.
again,
Yeah.
like I would say the Stanley Parable is sort of like an experience, and so your mileage may vary with some of that stuff. Like that, like even when we're talking about like puzzle games, like it's like I just like sort of again spoiler free, sort of like just looking at this a little bit here. I enjoyed my time with the game, but there were times where I was like, I did want something a little more from it. But it's like you said,
Okay.
it's a one button game. It's basically a walking simulator with
Hmm.
limited. And it's like, if they could have managed to actually tack more of a game into this, like make it a little more interactive, make it a little bit more something, like I think it would have stood up a little bit better. That all that being said, I think it's a
Hmm.
really good game,
Yeah.
or it's a really neat experience. I just, and like I said, I think part of it is like I'm not sure that it does feel like not a period piece, but like it is a game of a certain time. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I just, it was 2013, it was published. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, like, yeah, I can kind of like remember the scene, and I appreciate that. But yeah, that does sort of, that's like sort of how, that's my spoiler free impression,
Yeah.
where it's like,
Yeah. I think that's also a good segue into what we typically call baggage, or basically our
Yeah.
history with the game. I played the game quite a long time ago. I mean, very long time ago. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Obviously, it's on our top 100 list. And since you hadn't played it before, but you knew
Hmm.
of the game, that was because of me. I do think it deserves a place on this list, and we can talk about that a
Hmm.
bit more later, as to why. But that's my history with it. The reason I say that I think that that's a good segue is because if you want something a little more game-y, which is in a different way, it's not like it's complex at all. But the next game by
The beginner's guide.
yes,
Hmm.
exactly, is what I was going to bring up, is that I played the beginner's guide after this, and that is it is similar in that it is a narrated event, but it's not it's narrate as in like basically you're this guy's reading his journal entries to you about creating a video game and about that game really deals with the ideas of artistic intent and the role of the audience and how that affects what you create. And so that game, I think, has a lot more to say than the Stanley Parable does. I really enjoyed the Beginner's Guide, but I don't think, for reasons that we'll talk about later, I think the Stanley Parable deserves the top 100 list. Although personally, I think I was more affected by the Beginner's Guide. I would
Mm.
highly recommend that one as well. Slightly more game because it has more elements to it. Because as the guys creating this game, you play different versions of this game.
Hmm.
Um, and so there's a bit more to it than there is in the Stanley Parable, but it's not as reactionary. It's not as open world as the Stanley Parable ends up being, if that makes sense. Even though everything's within, a single building, although the building might be more like the last house. But anyways, that's we'll get into that later. That's my history with this game, and also, yeah, high recommendation for the beginner's guide as well. So, do you have any history that you want to talk about, Nate, outside of
This is,
not
I
playing it?
mean, I I had heard about this game, and like that's the thing is like I've always kind of been on like sort of hovered in like sort of again the games as art and the artsy fartsy kind of like conversations. And this is a game that came
Mm-hmm.
up from time to time. And I just have to sort of own it. It's like I do have a bit of a contrarian bend, and so when like it's like this might be one of the greatest games of all time. I'm just like you sure about that? Um,
Okay.
and so playing it was really interesting. It did serve as a bit of a time machine kind of scenario where it's like
Okay.
it took me back to like 2013 and that era of like game design and stuff like that. And it was really pretty charming. And I I so I don't have a ton of baggage with it because I didn't play it. I knew about it. I knew it was supposed to be something kind of special. And yeah, I think to more or less it it is special. I just and part of it is just again kind of wrestling with the like maybe just certain types of games just aren't for me, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
Um that being said, I do want to stress that I really did like it
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, and I did appreciate it. I just Yeah, and again, it reminds me of just sort of even our conversation a little bit, maybe not to the same extent, but like about the Talos principle, where it
Sure.
just kind of hit
Yeah.
a point where it's like I I want to like this game way more than I actually like it.
Hmm.
Like my desire to like this game, and now that is like I wouldn't say it's that was like the Talos principle where it's like I wanted to like that game, and then when I actually started playing it, it was like I ended up like just kind of like feeling really middling on it. With this,
Okay.
I did the I just have to like the writing carried it for me. like,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and that's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Um, but it was like, I just remember sometimes being like, okay, like, it's like, I got the, I get the point. It's like, but like, but it just it left me whelmed.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. All
So
right. Yeah,
yeah,
with those impressions and with our history, I think now's a good time to dive into spoilers. What do you say?
yeah. I mean, and again, I don't know how much there is really to spoil, like as far as like
Hmm.
unique scenarios. And again, I do want to stress to people listening to, like, if you haven't played it at this point, just go play it. Like, it's
Go do it. Yeah.
$15. There's a
Exactly.
free
Yeah.
demo on Steam. So like at the very least, you can do the demo. You can sort of see what that's about. And I'm like, dude, playthroughs of this game sometimes are like 10 minutes long. Like, so
Hmm.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's not long.
Right. Yep, I agree. Go play it because after this point in the podcast, then we will be delving into some. That's right. Spoilers. We're doing some spoilers here.
Yeah.
Just in terms of we don't want to give away anything in the game, but um now that everyone who's listening has either played the game, knows what
Or
it's about.
proceeded at their own peril.
Yes, yeah. Now we can have a bit more of a freer conversation. And I mean I'd like to start at the beginning if you're cool with that, kind of
Yeah.
backtracking a little bit, where I said that the game opens. This was something that actually State of the Arc had another episode on of the greatest video game openings. And so this is kind of in the forefront of my mind. And while I would not say that this is one of the greatest video game openings, I think it is very intentional the way that this game
I think it's
opens.
pretty good.
Yeah. With Stanley sitting at his desk, and you note that the work that he does at his desk is extremely mundane. Now you can say that this is just because this is a treatise against the capitalist system that treats people as just a cog in the machine. Yeah, you could go that route if you want to, but I think it's actually making a statement about what you're doing right now, about playing video games, about control. Because it literally tells him to push buttons at specific times, and then later on throughout the game the narrator is telling you to go to different areas, which means pushing buttons at certain times. So I think the beginning of this game is actually kind of cluing you on to the themes, some things that are going to be hit on throughout the rest of the game, and I just think that's really cool. um yeah, I don't know if I just want to jump in, but the I that stands out to me as I replay through it,
And it could,
as I
I
look at this
mean,
game again.
it could be a bit of like an exercise in the anti-capitalist screed. It could be some not so subtle, commentary on the futility of pointless labor. It could be a lot of things.
Hmm.
Um, and it could be multiple things at once.
Hmm.
So it could just sort of be like, and again, I do think with just the way that I think that your sort of self-referential interpretation where you're saying like the game is sort of telling you about itself,
Hmm.
and kind of like, even like kind of, for lack of a better term, like taking a poke at you, saying like,
Yeah.
what you are doing, what Stanley is doing is stupid.
Hmm.
And by proxy, what you are doing is stupid. Not just
Sure.
because what Stanley is doing, but also like you're the one who is actively playing the game and like pushing buttons.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's not completely invalid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I say it not in that, oh, the entire game is encapsulated in the beginning, but I do think it is very intentional that it starts off that way. And so all that I'm saying is that the imagery and the theme that it's saying at the beginning there is what carries through the rest of the game that they play with. And so this is where I wanted to, where I guess I said I'd put a pin in it and kind of bring it up later, is that I think the comedy of this game, like you said, is what protects it from being pretentious. Because
Yeah.
throughout this
Yeah.
game, you get basically like a intro to philosophy
Hmm.
throughout different because you have questions of what is choice, what does it really matter. Um, there's even a route where Stanley basically goes insane because he's asking these questions and he's deviating from the path. You have the narrator rustling through papers to like trying to see what is through certain doors that you're wandering off into. You get into a bunch of crazy scenarios, and the narrator will fairly often go into some basic level philosophy as he talks. But
Hmm.
because it is comedic, I don't think playing through this game that the writers really had a point they were trying to drive home. I don't think this game is making a statement about the nature of choice. I don't. I think they're playing with these ideas and presenting and like throwing a bunch of stuff on the wall that you can play with in an interactive experience to introduce you to these ideas, but I don't think it's actually coming to any conclusions. And where other games I might fault it for that, in this game I think it's particularly fun because it feels as though it's like an intro course to just to introduce ideas to you and have fun in a world that introduces those ideas. I don't think it's actually saying video games are pointless, pushing buttons is pointless, or
No. Well,
yeah.
I think it kind of, if it does say those things, it says them. It does sort of like sort of skirt that with comedy. So it's more of
Mhm,
like, this is kind of silly and stupid. Isn't this,
mhm.
it's kind of
Right.
like it's inviting you to sort of laugh along with it
Yes.
versus there's a way to do it that's like sort of cynical and mean spirited. And the game, now
Mhm,
the narrator can definitely be a little mean spirited. He's a,
mhm.
again, that passive aggressive thing. I
Yes.
think, and again, I just go back to, I think it can be more than one thing. So I think there is
Mhm,
probably like some commentary, and thought exercises put down on paper,
mhm.
to maybe wrestle with like, what does choice mean? What does like choosing something actually mean? What does that, like, what are the consequences of these things? Like, what,
Mhm.
like, does agency actually exist, or are you just sort of another cog in the machine? And I think you
Sure.
can ask those questions in a way that is a little bit disarming, a little bit sort of like just funny, like tongue in cheek, kind of like poking.
Mhm.
And it may not be, again, it may not be like the sort of the pretentious, like, we're doing 300 levels sort of like, examination of ethics or whatever.
Mhm.
But it's kind of, you know, I just go back to the statement, like, it can be more than one thing. So
Yeah.
I think there is some light commentary in the game. I
Mhm.
think they do have a position. They do sort of like, yeah, like, they do have things that they are saying, but I think they're also not taking those things super seriously. Like, it's more
Okay.
like, it's kind of like asking the question, like, isn't that silly? Like, to like this, like, if we're thinking about futility and you're just here pushing buttons and Stanley's just pushing buttons, like, isn't the whole sort of like premise a little absurd,
Mhm.
you know? And
Sure.
and again, I think it can be both. So,
Yeah, I can agree with you that there is certainly like that. Maybe that's the idea, is that it is all just absurd because I think as I've looked more into the game, not necessarily playing it, but also like looking at YouTube and stuff like that, and looking at all the endings, this game is inconsistent in
oh
its
yeah.
endings. There is not a there are, 4 or 5 endings that cannot be true. I talked about like the one where Stanley goes insane, right? So obviously, like if the creators actually wanted to make a statement about something, then then all of these different lines would carry over similar themes and they would stay consistent. I think of something like there's a mystery that, well, even oh my gosh, Echoes of the Eye, the Outer Wilds. There's a
Mm.
mystery why you continually wake up and all that stuff. But everything that you do is consistent throughout that game. There's nothing that's like wildly different that cannot be true. Like different routes of this game cannot both be true, you know? Like unless you say every route except the certain route is a simulation, which is just dumb. Because nothing in the game hints to any of that. And also taking in the different endings, the best ending, the quote unquote best ending, the one where the narrator actually gets his way. If you follow everything the narrator tells you to do, you eventually end up in paradise. Like Stanley gets out. And the narrator even says he goes home and him and his girlfriend like pledge their love to one another. Like and you're walking through the grass. And so like the best ending is if you actually follow the narrator. Now, yes, is that a statement against like, oh, maybe you shouldn't stray from the path, or is do you really have any choice? Like, yes, there are things contained in that, but what I'm saying is that um because even the best ending isn't satisfying, and cannot also be true while other endings are true, the game I don't think is trying to make a statement. It's throwing out a bunch of different things is the
Well,
way that
yeah,
I
I don't think
think.
it's making a single solitary like statement, and I don't think it's like sort of like this weird anti-capitalist
Right.
screed,
Mhm.
right? I think there are probably some of that in there,
Right,
like,
there's a joke about it in the same way that oh my gosh, why can't I think of the name of the movie where they beat up the printer? Um
oh, Office
it,
Space.
Office Space, there you go. In
Hmm.
the same way that Office Space is a joke against that same thing, but then they get their comeuppance. Things like that. Like it's not seriously making a statement about it.
Hmm.
Um but it is in there.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, but there's sort of okay, and even in Office Space, there is sort of I think there are like, for lack of a better term, profound truths that can be extrapolated from that.
Mhm.
Like, think about like all the work that they, and it's funny and we laugh about it because it's kind of ridiculous to watch people sort of like bend themselves in half. But it's like,
Mhm.
think about it. It's like, these guys do this thing to sort of defraud their employer of all this
Mhm.
money. And part of the reason that they're doing that is because they're just immensely dissatisfied with the way that they've been treated,
Right.
etc. Um, so there's something in there that you can sort of like you can pull at a little bit and say like, you know the role of just like it is good to, and well, and in a lot of ways the so in particular that scene where they're just like curb stomping that fax machine,
Yes. Mhm.
it's like, they're kind of like venting their anger against this thing that is a bit of like, it's kind of a cipher. It's a cipher like
Mhm.
for the crappy bosses. It's a cipher for like the garbage work, them
Mhm.
being underappreciated, and like more particularly, like I think the copy machine slash fax machine is also a bit of a cipher. Just like it stands in as sort of just like any sort of impediment or just like
Mhm.
unnecessary sort of like obstacle or burden that is heaped on you, and they're just like, this
Mhm.
thing sort of exists almost to be the bane of their existence. And
Mhm.
so there is a part of them where it's like just, and again, it's not
Yeah.
anything like life changing. Like,
Mhm.
I think that the funny part is like, because we can all sort of sympathize, like we've
Right,
all
right. It
been
does
someone.
feel good to be a gangster. We all know that.
But it also, like, we look at that and it's a little cathartic. It's a
Yeah.
little, like,
Yeah.
therapeutic where it's like we all have that thing
Yeah, the
where it's
opening
like,
scene where he's sitting in traffic, we've all been there. R
well, in particular with the copier, like,
Mhm.
we all have those things where it's like, if I could just destroy this thing,
Yeah.
like, it would sort of, like, bring about, like, a wholeness or a peace. And I just think, like I said, I'm not sure that there's anything like deeply profound. And I don't think
Mhm.
I honestly I think the best messages aren't the ones that are heavy handed and preachy. And that's
Yeah.
I think part of what makes stuff like this effective
Mhm.
because it asks questions. It asks what if.
Yeah.
Like, what if like so one of the things, and again, I'm not sure that it's like this super heavy handed answer or question, but like one of the things that when you do what the narrator says and you listen and you obey, you're rewarded for that. So maybe in a way they're saying like, hey, what about this question? Like maybe obedience is a path to happiness. Like I don't think, and
Mhm.
I don't think they're like, I don't think it's like this super heavy weighty thing where they're not trying to have this like super weighty conversation. That's why everything is
Right.
kind of a gag. That's why everything
Yeah.
is kind of a joke. That's why everything is like kind of not taken seriously. But it's like there are still truths in there, and like they
Sure.
can say something and be like, okay, like hey, this is a maxim that we think is at least worth like exploring or wrestling with or whatever. But
Mhm.
also like we're doing it in kind of like a cheeky fun way.
Yeah.
Like, and again, it comes back to that. It doesn't have to be either or. I think it's like kind of both end. Like, and maybe that's not the author's intent sometimes, but maybe it is. I mean, you know, but yeah.
Yeah. I just don't find it to have a consistent message throughout. I
Well,
think it has a
I think it's
number.
just a series of questions. It's a
Yeah.
series of vignettes.
Yeah.
So like, what if? What
Mhm.
if? What if? Yeah, I don't think there's like one grand like unifying theme to the
Mhm.
game.
Right.
I think it's like, or maybe the grand unifying theme is like, hey, like little, oh yeah, there might be like one, but it's more about like this sort of just like the
The end is not the end.
no, the end is not the end is not the end is not the end is not the end. Um, but maybe it's kind of like this thing where it's like because part of it is just repeating the same scenario, making minute adjustments,
Mhm.
and just saying like maybe like a grand unifying theme of the game is just sort of saying like, hey, like something that seems relatively insignificant or that you don't think about can have drastic consequences. I don't know. But I don't even
Sure.
think they like I think they're like comfortable throwing that out there. So I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, isn't this kind of like look at how silly this is and like like look at how we can kind of have fun with this idea. But yeah, I don't think there's like these like I don't think it's a super deep or profound game. I don't think there's
Mhm.
like I don't think there's like this massive like unifying point that like the whole thing experience coagulates around, right? Or collects
Mhm.
around. But rather it's this thing where it's it's almost invites you to have a little bit of a conversation with the game about
Yeah.
these things, like ask
Mhm.
questions to wrestle with it yourself.
Yeah.
But it does it in a way that is disarming and kind of, ridiculously clever and
Mhm.
a little bit insulting at times.
Yeah. Yeah. In a way that kind of goads you on, though. It does
Yeah.
constantly reward you with new scenarios and things, and yeah, yeah. So it's very fun. Like you said, very clever. Yeah, I have this written down in the notes, and I forgot to kind of bring it up earlier. But I said that this game is like a two-way petting zoo. If you remember what the two-way petting zoo is, that's from The Office. It was an idea that they would have that they would do a two-way petting zoo, and when asked, Jim says, "Well, it's where you pet the animals and the animals pet you back." And in the same way, this video game, you play this video game but this video game also plays you.
It kind of plays you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think like, sort of looking at the notes here,
Mhm.
um, to just wrestle with the question, does it still hold up? And
Yeah.
do we agree with it where it is on our top 100? I think it does hold up. And again, I just sort of preface that, like, I kind of realize that this isn't necessarily like my type of game,
Okay.
but I did find myself laughing at it. I did find myself enjoying it from time to time.
Mhm.
And I think, and again, I just stress that I think the humor actually sort of like insulates it from a lot of like harsher criticisms. Like if this game
Mhm.
took itself a little bit more seriously, it would not be it like we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. We probably wouldn't be worrying about it. But because it
Right.
does kind of like it takes, you know, I keep wanting to say this, and I'm just gonna. It's not a super nice word, boys and girls. So don't say it. Like, but this is a sort of a British term. But it takes the piss out of itself,
Mhm.
and by doing so, it actually makes itself, I think, a little more viable long term,
Yeah.
or a
Yeah.
lot more viable long term.
Mhm. I agree. I do think it definitely holds up. And it's funny that it's been remade, all that stuff. So in terms of that, it's such a simple game. But I do think it holds up. And the reason that I think it still continues to deserve a spot on our top 100 games, I was thinking about this week, um, is that what makes this game special and unique among kind of the all the different video games that are out there is that this is a game that is very unique to the medium. The Stanley Parable cannot be told as a movie or as a
No,
book
yeah.
or as a
It
I
has to
mean
be experience. It
maybe
has
a
to be experienced this way. Like
yeah.
the even the incredibly limited interactivity that you have with a game
Mhm.
is necessary as a precursor. Like
Yeah.
it is required for you to have any understanding or meaningful sort of like
Mhm.
dialogue with the game.
Yep. And in addition to that, because of its simplicity, I can recommend this game to anyone who's interested in video games, and even maybe someone who's not interested in just like checking out what are video games about. I think this game is pretty much universal. That even if you have 30 minutes, check it out, try it out. Like I think my parents would have an interesting time with this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty much the only people that I can think of that would not like it would be I know of some people that first person games, 3D games make them nauseous. And so if that's the case, well that stinks. This
Hmm.
one's going to be harder for you.
At least they
But
make that claim.
yeah, not gonna. Yeah, no, not naming any names. But no, I mean, I've said that I've got nauseous playing some games here lately too. So, that could be me. That could be me. But I think that's what stands out to me is that it's universal appeal, and because it's comedic, and because of its simplicity. And it is a game that it's very unique to the medium of video games, and because of that, yeah, I think it still deserves a place. I'm
Well,
fine with it lower on the list, but
no, I think
um,
92 is a good spot. I think
yeah,
it's like I don't like, if I'm being honest, I don't think it breaks out of the 90s because it is a game that very
okay,
much walks so that other games can fly or run. Um,
okay. Are there
I
any
don't
that
know
come
what
to
those
mind for
other
you?
games
Oh,
are
okay.
yet, but it's sort of a game that exists as sort of a an individual um, piece that other people can sort of draw from and
Mhm.
sort of take inspiration from. And and again, I think it asks interesting questions
Right.
of the player and of just that experience. And I think, yeah, I think it's a pretty masterful game.
Yeah.
I also just think it's like at times I'm just like, it's not my vibe, but
Okay.
that's just me being
Yeah.
a stinker, you know? But like I said, I do think it's good. Earlier in the day, I was kind of wrestling with it. I was like, do I think it belongs on the list? And I said, I think so. Until we can
Okay.
find something that does that better,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah,
So
I think its closest kind of analog, and even then, it's still pretty far in my mind. Would be What Remains of Edith Finch, which is also on our list. But that's for very different reasons. That is a much more serious game, but it's more subtle with its themes, if that makes sense. It does
well,
require more out of you, you know.
I think I think it's much more of a game. What Remains of Edith Finch? I think it's much
Okay.
more of a game
Mm-hmm.
than this. Like there's a lot of different components to that. Yeah, that bathtub scene still just wrecks me, just
Mm.
guts me. But yeah, but I think they're sort of, yeah, like and What Remains takes itself a lot more seriously.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah,
um,
yeah. Even
whereas I
well,
think
yeah.
I think with the Stanley Parable, it's just like yeah, it's
Like you said, yeah. It doesn't take itself seriously. Yeah,
and
and
I think that's kind of like there is some wisdom or some interesting insights there, but it
mm-hmm.
just the humor again makes all that stuff a lot more palatable.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but yeah, I think it's fine where it's at.
yeah.
I don't see it breaking out of the 90s just
Okay,
because
cool.
I think it's very good, but it's not great, kind of like in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay. Okay. I Well, for reasons I
well,
just
and
explained,
it's
I would say that it's great, but only like it's exceptional. But not in the sense that it's going to change your life, but in that it's an experience that I would
it's
recommend
it's it's very
to anyone.
like it's unique. It is very one
Yeah.
of a kind. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are things that kind of approach it, like like I would say, like I think the original Portal kind of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
evokes some of those things. And again, like it just like on the surface, like the narrator is a bit of an antagonistic foil at
Yep.
sometimes. GLaDOS is just flat out trying to murder you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I wouldn't remove it from the list. Like it's like to me, it's like it just doesn't go much higher. It's like it's a
Yeah.
very good game. I think it's kind of foundational. Um, I don't think that it's required playing or reading, but I think it comes really close. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Well,
but
the another question that we have here on the list in our notes, one that we like to ask of a lot of these games, is just about we're Christians, and so this podcast, we seek to equip and encourage the church here. And so, just approaching this game from a biblical worldview, is there anything to say about this game?
I don't.
And at first, I was kind of back and forth on this because I don't think the game really says that much. But as I was thinking about this more, and some of the themes that it does touch on, there is something that stands out to me. So I'll just go ahead and go for it, and then if you'd like to kind of add anything, you're welcome to. But this game does not even necessarily wrestle with, but at least plays with. I'll put it that way. Plays with the ideas of choice and your effect on the future, and purpose, meaning, and if someone else is telling your story. And what stands out to me as I think about that from a biblical worldview, which again, this is like in a very joking context within in the course of the game. But what stands out to me is that we serve a God that is so amazing that both are true, that we have freedom to make choices in our life, and
That are
yet
meaningful.
that are meaningful. Yes, that we're responsible for before a holy God. And yet he is also sovereign, so that he uses all of the acts of mankind, even our most evil acts. And that's something that really comes to mind over this Easter weekend. Those,
Hmm.
crucifying the Lord of glory, the Son of God. He uses even the most evil and wicked acts of human beings who are making choices to do evil, and he uses them within his plan, within his good plan, to bring about goodness and glory. Um, so yes, there's all kinds of different things, that we could go into in the way that he redeems broken things. But also just the fact that he can both, like in this game, there's a narrator and obviously you kind of controlling Stanley. He is the writer of the grand story of all of history, but in a way in which he gives us the ability to choose, while also planning this story that includes the choices that we will make, which is just, it's mind blowing. So while this game kind of like toys around with some of these ideas, the real truth is that yes, we have a will, like we can make choices. Now, those choices are obviously going to be led by our passions and our desires and our sinful desires. But we can make choices throughout the world that are real, that have weight, and we bear responsibility for our choices. But also that the grand narrator, the grand writer of all of history, the God that we serve, is sovereign over all of it and is bringing about everything to its glorious end. And so there is purpose and meaning both from our perspective, but also from God's as well. He's purposing all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So that's what sticks out to me when I think about it from a biblical worldview. Is it that extrapolating a bit much? Yeah, maybe. But
Yeah, I don't think it has all that much to offer. I think sort of there's some interesting things. Like, I do think about just sort of like the idea of that initial sort of playthrough where you just obey, and how like
yeah,
it's like there's something there, but I don't think it's, again, I don't think there is this sort of like grand meta narrative that it's trying to expound upon. I think it's
right.
just it's there's a lot of gags, and I think like there is like some cleverness and some thoughtfulness, and they're wrestling with those things. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, I don't think it has anything like really wild to say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it has things to say, and it does ask questions, but yeah, those aren't necessarily even questions that like our faith should be afraid to reckon with or deal with
Right.
or wrestle
Yep.
with.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Good stuff, man. All right.
yeah, but yeah, I am struggling. I am on
Mm-hmm.
the struggle bus. I did want to, before we sort of before we sort of move on to the final forms here, I
Mm-hmm.
did want to just, it's a little bit of a, not an asterisk, but
Mm-hmm.
Into the Aether did an episode on this not too long ago. I can't remember what number it is. I looked it up
Mm-hmm.
and I listened to it today. It now, and again, they're talking about the ultra deluxe version, and so there's going to be stuff where it is a fascinating sort of commentary about the game without
Yeah.
actually saying much of anything about the game. And that sounds really weird, and it is really weird, but it's also kind of delightful. And yeah,
Nice.
so
Nice.
that that episode of Into the Aether, like let me see if I can pull it up and
I
just,
think it was like May of 22, something like that.
yeah, it is older.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's worth a listen. It's weird, and it's kind of like it doesn't make sense at first, but if you hang on, it sort of, I was delighted by their execution.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was just so stinking clever.
Mm-hmm.
But we also just sort of like, and for you guys who've been hanging with us the whole time, this is going to seem a little redundant, but we do just like that sort of like wrap it up with a little bit of what we call the TLDL. Too long, didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
We've already talked about who made it. It's now I gotta pull up my
Galaxy
info.
Cafe, Galactic Cafe.
Galactic Cafe. They
There you
were
go.
the developer and the publisher. And what is it? It's essentially a walking simulator.
Mm-hmm.
It's a comedy game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a comedy game disguised as a walking simulator
That reacts to what you do throughout the game.
Yeah.
There you go.
And sometimes very passively aggressively berates you.
I didn't say what kind of reactions. It just gives you reactions.
You just get reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Who should play it? I would say I think most people, most
Yeah.
students of video games should play this. I don't think it's 100% necessary, but I think it is useful and it
Mm-hmm.
is good. So yeah, would you agree, disagree, provide any additional
Oh, I
caveats?
agree. Who should play it? Anyone. Anyone who's interested in video games at all,
It's
which is a large swath of people.
I think it's definitely like you want to wait. You do want to wait until there's like sort of a yeah. I wouldn't let a 5-year-old play this.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, that's true. That's
Well,
true.
yeah. I
It's a
mean,
little
I do
clever.
think most people like yeah. I think again, most people should play this, but it's like just as far as like even thinking about ages, I would
Mm-hmm.
say like early teens
Yeah.
at the earliest.
Yeah.
So, um, so what should you keep in mind while playing? I think for me, if I'm being honest, the thing is like there's nothing super profound here. It's
Okay.
enjoyable. It kind of winks and nods at you, and there are questions that it asks. Like the experience sort of begs certain questions, but it is a game that you can just sort of like you can, and it's I think it's not only acceptable, but it's actually um, maybe in some ways preferred. You can just sort of enjoy the ride and laugh
Mm-hmm.
and sort
Yeah.
of say like, what kind of like ridiculousness are we getting into? That's I think the thing that just like that. Hey, keep that in mind, and I think that will make the game a lot more like enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
um,
I'd say what should you keep in mind while playing? That there's not a hugely satisfying end state to the game. Just play it and enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it, then set it down.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Why does it matter? I think it matters because it's. I think what you said, Josh, about the fact that it is something. It is a rare thing. I think in video games that in a lot of ways that it doesn't hold. There's no like sort of parallel experiences. You can't read the book. You
Mm-hmm.
can't watch the movie and sort of get it. You have to just yeah, you have to play the game to
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah,
So,
I would give this a similar answer to the next question is why is it on the top 100? It's because it's very unique to the medium of video games. I think the
mhm,
closest analog would be something like Stranger Than Fiction, if you've seen that movie.
mhm,
But imagine that, but you are actually in control of the main character. And so that gives it a whole different feel rather than watching someone else experience something like that. Now you're the one experiencing it, and there's direct feedback by the narrator when you do things. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Where can you find it? So, it is available on and just the base Stanley Parable, not the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, is available on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Ultra Ultra Deluxe released on consoles, so
Hmm.
um,
Yeah. So,
it
pretty
has
much
that
all
kind.
modern consoles
Mhm.
you can play it on or on computer. Different OSs
But
there. So, basically everywhere is where you can play it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, for yeah, and the Ultra Deluxe version does include the base content,
right.
so
Yep.
yeah, so it is available pretty much everywhere. Yeah, but yeah. Well, that being said, Josh, we have sort of gone through the game.
Mm-hmm.
We've shared some thoughts, and I think it's time to just kind of land this plane. And
Mm.
but on our way out, are there any shout outs that you would like to offer to anybody in our community?
Yeah, I wanted to shout out to Bergen and Papa Wargs in Discord just for the we're doing this active April thing, and they are killing it. They're giving us their updates and their progress on weight loss in there, and them two in particular. I'm just like, dang. Well, I'm not winning this year because they're
Well, I
killing it.
think
So way to
part
go.
of it is we did go with a just straight weight loss and not
Sure.
percentage,
Yeah.
and so it's yeah.
Yeah. But they're
No,
doing awesome. Keep it up.
yeah, well
And
done,
it's
gentlemen.
motivating. So
Yeah, well
shout out
done.
to you guys.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But I think for me, it's going to be Jono and Spike in the Let's Study channel had an interesting
Oh,
conversation
nice.
about God's sovereign will versus man's free will, and like that's a touchy
Fun.
topic, especially in light of our current episode. It kind of there's a little bit of overlap. It's kind of weird,
Nice.
makes me laugh a little bit. But like those dudes, guys, well done. Like that was a really interesting conversation, and I'm glad to see that you guys are having those, but also that you kept it civil. You were adults. Good job. So shout
Well
out.
done.
So last last form before we really sort of close this thing out. I think, Josh, that I need to know I need to know, what is your question?
Oh, that's right. So your question we have a question for everyone. That question is what
is your
is your
quest?
question? What is your question for us? You guys have submitted some questions. We've picked out our favorites and we're going to answer them here today. So the one that I picked out, and actually I picked one out before there was kind of a windfall of other questions. So um, sorry, not sorry. Get them in early, I guess, is all that I can say. But my question comes from McKelvis in our Discord. He asks, "How do you feel about using guides, walkthroughs, exploits, cheats, etc., and how it takes away from gaming versus figuring everything out yourself, or vice versa?" Um, I thought this was an interesting question because just some of the things that I've different ways that I've been experiencing games. So my default is that I generally try not to use guides. So case in point, I was talking about the Banner Saga earlier and how I didn't know much about the game going in, and that was by design. And I let it carry me through the experience. And I think for most games, okay, here's my hot take. I think for most games that is the ideal way to play it. That is the way that the
Mm-hmm.
developer creates the game, is that you don't have anyone helping you along with different things throughout the game. However, I do think there are exceptions to that. Particularly, another game that I talked about earlier was Ace Attorney 2, in which I did use a guide because I wasn't interested in figuring out a lot of the way that the game requires you to think in its different puzzles and the point and click adventure kind of aspects of those games. Just I don't enjoy them, and
Mm-hmm.
so but I do enjoy the story, and I wanted to see what happened next. I would get very frustrated because I wouldn't understand how things would work together throughout the game. So I think there are instances in which I will go to games and I don't mind losing a certain aspect of figuring things out by myself. But by and large, I generally try my hardest not to resort to guides unless I have to. That's me personally. I know not everyone does it that way. Frankly, I think that's kind of crazy. But if you know what you're getting into, I suppose you could just start off a game with a guide, but I generally don't do that. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. Just the quick answer is it mostly depends. I am probably a lot more like more pro guy than you.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that I look at it is that I want to extract maximum benefit from my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there are games where I have found it to be much more beneficial to have sort of, and it's I tend to use it more as like a safety net. So it's like I'm playing and
Hmm.
there might be like an optimal path. Like I want the optimal path. Like when we did Persona 3 Reload, I followed a guide for that. Um because one, you know, um we don't have all the time in the world. And so it's like we were
Right.
doing we were going to do an episode, so I did need to sort of have a roadmap there. I didn't have the luxury of, but also I just found it to be more enjoyable, like in the sense that like it's nice to have like, hey, if I can figure some of those things out on my own, that's cool, but it's also nice to have like a handhold where I can just like sort of latch onto it and sort of pull
Hmm.
myself through this situation. And I think the thing is like, I think that just that's an inherent problem for for video games, for this medium. Just because like with movies, you don't need the movie, just sort of it unspools itself. Like you just watch the movie and it just, plays on your TV or whatever. For books, again, you just turn the page and that you're kind of guided through this. But with this, there's that exploratory kind of like figure it out kind of thing
Hmm.
that I like for the most part, but at times can be a little bit tedious. And when it is just too much, I'm just like, man, like,
Yeah.
I'm good. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, my best question, I have to find it here because, oh, I did find it. Um, comes from Wesley, and it's from a while back, and he asked it a while back, and I think we kind of dodged it because it's kind of big, but I'm going to read it and we're going to try to answer it quickly. So, apologies for interrupting the poop conversation, but I've had a bit of a long question that I've been wanting to chew on for a few weeks, so buckle up. I had a brief discussion with Paul about this when it was announced, but the news from Xbox relating to their Muse model was very intriguing to me. Here's a snippet from the the official press release. Although it is still early, this model of research is pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible. We are already using Muse to develop a real-time playable AI model trained on other first-party games, and we see potential for this work to one day benefit players and game creators, from allowing us to revive nostalgic games to faster creative ideation. Today, countless classic games tied to aging hardware are no longer playable by most people. Thanks to this breakthrough, we are exploring the potential for Muse to take older back catalog games from our from our studios and optimize them for any device. We believe this could radically change how we preserve and experience classic games in the future and make them accessible to more players. The little aside that they put in their press release wasn't even the main focus, but the application of such an AI model sounds unbelievably amazing. My question would be then, how do you see this type of technology changing the landscape of retro gaming and retro archival emulation and preservation? The idea of being able to take what is essentially a ROM and have AI design a customized experience around it with whatever specific tweaks and adjustments you want made to make whatever you want to make sounds absolutely fascinating to me. And I think that this type of assistive AI technology could either be really, really helpful for the industry or could absolutely go up in flames and destroy everything, given that the capability to essentially would lead to an absolute deluge of terrible shovelware level of mods and adjustments to games we love. It's going to be really fascinating to see where it goes. So, all that being said, I would pretty much agree with you, Wesley. I think I'm a little more hesitant. Like, I think when exercised well, it's really cool. Like, you use AI to sort of build out a game that's stranded on an older platform. Cool. Like, I don't have like that use case scenario doesn't sound incredibly offensive to me. It sounds kind of interesting.
Hmm.
The problem is that that's never where it stops. So,
Yeah.
like, so
Yeah, I think in general that it sounds like a really cool tool. I think of things like you're talking about having like building custom emulators for games. I think of using that on consoles. So while we have like tons of emulators available nowadays on PC already, this sounds like a tool because, like, in theory, all you would have to do is train the AI on the game that you want it to learn, and then train the AI on the console that you want it to replicate. Now, not necessarily that you have the BIOS to that console, because that might get into some weird stuff. But it sounds like in theory that would totally be possible to recreate something like that. And then on the console that you want the emulator to run on. And it seems like, again, in theory, that AI could be a tool to get you 90% of the way there. And then you just put in a little bit of work to kind of fix things. And if it trashes the game, then it trashes the game. So I think the potential there for if you want to call it games preservation, I just think of like ports, basically. Porting old games so that it's playable on newer hardware sounds awesome. I think,
or rebuilding a version of that game.
yeah,
essentially.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure there was like a Doom version of this at some point in time.
Okay. I mean,
let me
yeah,
check.
Doom's on everything. But that said, yeah, could people use it for other things? And yeah, could it make, tons of mods like you're talking about? Yes, I suppose it would open the door to that, to where you can just gonna
It's an AI
change
generated version of Quake 2 in a web browser.
Wow.
That's what it is.
That's cool. I don't think that would necessarily destroy a lot of things. The things that it would destroy would be things like, I'm thinking of like professional level speed running. Would be very difficult to kind of to tell when you're using AI and stuff like that. I'd imagine some of those higher level technical things, or esports or something, like it could pose some problems in those cases. But I don't think, just unleashing a bunch of mods is really much of a problem, because the mod scene is one in which you have like a lot of these different kind of people who are very much attuned to those things. So it sounds in theory pretty cool. I know I've been talking for a little bit, but I don't have too much of an opinion on it, except that it sounds like a cool tool to use. I would imagine there would still be some legwork you'd need to put in to clean up, but for the most part, It sounds really cool.
Yeah. Well, that being said, I am fading. It is late, and we still have a little bit left after this. So, that being said, Josh, we did the things. Well,
guys,
tell people where they can find us.
You can find us on our Linktree. That's linktree.com/thebacklog-breakdown. We have all our social medias there. Reach out to us. Let us know what endings we missed in the Stanley Parable. Actually,
which ones we didn't talk about, because we didn't talk about most of them.
Yeah, Jim. So. I don't know. I haven't played Ultra Deluxe. We'll see.
So,
but anyway,
the
end is not the end, but this is not the end.
But this is the end of this. So until next time, guys.
Yeah, keep beating down your backlogs, and we'll keep breaking down the benefits.